Good morning. Welcome to you. Welcome to our Good Friday service. It is a special day for us as we stop and reflect on the cross, on Jesus' death, his suffering, on all it meant then and what it means still for us today. So it will be fairly somber and reflective this morning. Appropriate for the occasion, but Sunday as we gather then will be much more upbeat. We're going to have a series of readings this morning through Matthew 27, the final hours of Jesus' life before being crucified and buried.
Good morning again. So the first reading is from Matthew chapter 27, verses 1 to 26. Early in the morning, all the chief priests and the elders of the people made their plans how to have Jesus executed. So they bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate the governor. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. "I have sinned," he said, "for I have betrayed innocent blood." "What is that to us?" they replied. "That's your responsibility." So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. The chief priests picked up the coins and said, "It is against the law to put this into the treasury, since it is blood money." So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. This is why it has been called the field of blood to this day. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. They took the 30 pieces of silver, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field, as the Lord commanded me. Meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "You have said so," Jesus replied. When he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate asked him, "Don't you hear the testimony they are bringing against you?" But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor.
Now it was the governor's custom at the festival to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. At that time, they had a well-known prisoner whose name was Jesus Barabbas. So when the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them, "Which one do you want me to release to you? Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who's called the Messiah?" For he knew it was out of self-interest that they had handed Jesus over to him. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message: "Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus executed. "Which of the two do you want me to release to you?" asked the governor. "Barabbas," they answered. "What shall I do then with Jesus who is called the Messiah?" Pilate asked. They all answered, "Crucify him." "Why? What crime has he committed?" asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him." When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. "I am innocent of this man's blood," he said. "It is your responsibility." All the people answered, "His blood is on us and on our children." Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified.
For the second Bible reading, let's continue to look at Matthew chapter 27, And we'll be reading from verses 27 to verse 50. Matthew 27, verse 27. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand. Then they knelt in front of him and mocked him. "Hail, King of the Jews," they said. They spit on him and took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. After they had mocked him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him.
As they were going out, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross. They came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. There, they offered Jesus wine to drink, mixed with gall, but after tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they had crucified him, they divided up his clothes by casting lots, and sitting down, they kept watch over him. Above his head, they placed the written charge against him: "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." 2 rebels were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "You who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God." In the same way, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders mocked him. "He saved others," they said, "but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he wants him. For he said, 'I am the Son of God.'" In the same way, the rebels who were crucified with him also heaped insults on him.
From noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over all the land. About 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of those standing there heard this, they said, "He's calling Elijah." Immediately one of them ran and got a sponge. He filled it with wine vinegar, put it on a staff, and offered it to Jesus to drink. The rest said, "Now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him." And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit.
Let me pray for our time now. Heavenly Father, we pray this morning. Help us all to appreciate the weight of what Jesus, the Son of God, went through that day. This we ask in his name. Amen. Well, good morning. My name's David. I serve as one of the assistant ministers here at Stanhope. Welcome to you if you're joining us online as well. It's great to know that you're joining us, if not in person, then virtually. Well, as Steve was saying at the beginning this morning, we come this day as we do each year to remember. It's a far more somber day than Christmas. We come to remember events that took place nearly 2,000 years ago. Events that are shocking. Events that are horrendous, brutal, and unjust. We come to remember the man, Jesus, the Son of God, as he was rejected by the world. Matthew 27 records the overwhelmingly unjust treatment of Jesus by humanity. He came to his own, and his own did not receive him. Rather, we rejected him. Now, you may know many of these events already. I hope they're not too familiar for you. But you might be here today, and this might be the first time that you're hearing of such treatment. And you might be asking yourself, why are we worshipping a horrendous day? Why are we remembering such a brutal day? How could God allow something so unjust to carry on and to not stop it? I think we know injustice when we see it, don't we? We see court cases and criminal cases brought before a judge, and when justice, what we think is justice, is served, we take a deep sigh of relief that injustice has been corrected. I want us to see today that day that Jesus was punished. That the punishments that sent Jesus to the cross to die were the very punishments that he came to die on a cross for. What sent Jesus to the cross to die was what he was sent to the cross to die for. His dying was for what sent him there. Now, as the chapter unfolded and as it was read out for us, you could see one punishment after another taken out on Jesus. And as we see what Jesus endured here, we're going to see ourselves. As we see what he went through, we'll see how we have treated Jesus as well. We'll see how people like you and me, how we respond when Jesus comes to the world and he says, I am the Son of God. When he claims to have the authority of God the Son himself. The punishments dealt out to Jesus on that day reflect how we respond when Jesus says, take me as your king. But what sent Jesus to the cross to die were the very things he came to die for. Now, a few verses before Matthew chapter 27, we see the reason why this all happens. The high priest had addressed Jesus and gave him his chance. He said, I charge you, Jesus, under oath by the living God, tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God. And there may have been a bit of silence as everyone waited to hear what Jesus would say. What would he say to this charge? Well, he responds, you have said so. It is as you say. And for that, the Jewish people decided that Jesus was worthy of death. For who could dare claim to have such authority unless it was heresy? And so this one, Jesus, claiming to be the Son of God, he is led away. We don't want you as our king. We don't want you as a son of God. Get away from us, or rather, let's put you to death. How dare he claim to have this authority? And so Matthew 27 comes before us, and we first see Judas. You know Judas, the one who sold Jesus for a bag of money. But in this scene, he is seized with regret and remorse. He knows the wrong of what he has done. He knows that betraying Jesus was wrong. He recognizes that Jesus was innocent. This is unjust. And the enormity of what he has done is sinking in. It's gripping him like 1,000 butterflies in your stomach. He realizes, oh no, what have I done? While others in their anger led Jesus away to the end of their plans, Judas in his remorse sees the wrong in what he's done. He gets no comfort from the chief priests. He gets no relief from his grief. And his only escape, he thinks, is to commit suicide. He hangs himself and throws back the price for which he betrayed Jesus, 30 pieces of silver that he once treasured, he now throws away. It means nothing to me anymore. A price that was once treasured is now seen for how cheap it is. He has betrayed innocent blood. But Judas's betrayal that sent Jesus to the cross to die was the betrayal that Jesus went to the cross to die for. Jesus is accused of many things, and he says nothing. He says nothing to what they're saying. It may have been all completely false, but Jesus sees no reason to defend himself at this point. And if they're true, if they're accusing him of being the Son of God, then yes, it is true. That is who he says he is. But those accusations that sent him to the cross to die were the accusations from people he came to die for. As Jesus comes before the crowd, it only gets worse. What he experiences only grows in its shame. See Pilate, the Roman governor. He knows the wrong of what's going on. He can see how unjust this is. And he had the chance to release Jesus and to stand up for the innocent. But instead, he gives the crowd a choice. Who would you like to have released to you? Would you like to have this notorious criminal who tried to overthrow the government? An insurrectionist? Or would you rather have this one who's claiming to be your king, who's innocent? Who would you rather have, a guilty person or an innocent person? Now, Pilate knows why Jesus has been sent before him. It's self-interest. It's envy. It's jealousy. People acting out of their own hearts. It's horrible how people have treated Jesus. They looked out for their own interests. They thought, this is how I want to act. What was best and most enjoyable for them. For them, they said, let's kill him rather than submit to him as our king. And so they get their options, their choice. Who would you rather have released to you? Someone who is guilty or someone who is innocent? Now, it appears without the persuasion of the religious leadership that Jesus would not have been chosen. But mob rule wins out. The angry mob gets who they want. And despite Pilate's protestations, seeing he's getting nowhere, Pilate tries to flee from all responsibility. He could have stood up for the innocent. He could have asserted his rule, but instead, he literally washes his hands in front of them. I am innocent now of this man's blood. It is a cowardly act. It is not my responsibility anymore. I am free from guilt. It is on you, which only really heightens his own guilt. It is your responsibility, Pilate cries, fleeing from all responsibility himself. It's as if Pilate wants to be seen as free from guilt. Pilate wants to be publicly seen as having nothing to do with this. It's not his fault. But he has done nothing to protect Jesus. And so he says, it is your responsibility. But look at these shocking words that the crowd say. Pilate says, it is your responsibility. And listen to what the crowd says. His blood is on us and on our children. What are they doing? They're proud to have put Jesus, the Son of God, to death. You beauty, we've got our man. History is going to look kindly on us that we killed Jesus. They're happy. They're rejoicing. We're going to go down in the history books as the ones who condemned this liar to death. But the blame shifting and the pride that sent Jesus to the cross, they were what Jesus came to die for. Now, before going out to the cross, the soldiers get their chance to play high school bully. Picture the scene. One man and a gang of thugs. It's not a fair contest. They gang up and surround him. They mock him. You call yourself a king? Hail, King of the Jews, you're a pathetic king. With crown of thorns in place, soldiers kneeling in mock homage, they spit on Jesus. Now, who spits on anyone? If you see it on a sporting field, someone spitting on an opponent, that's disgusting. They take that staff that was given to Jesus, they rip it out of his hand, and they hit him, and hit him, and hit him again. This gang of thugs, Jesus defenseless, they hit him again. But this mockery and this violence that sent Jesus to the cross was the mockery and violence he came to die for. As he hangs from the cross, that same charge, King of the Jews, hangs above him. And in that moment of despair and shame, in what looks like their great victory and Jesus' great defeat, talk about kicking a man while he's down. The crowd insult him. They take their chance. Save yourself. Come down from the cross if you really are the Son of God. Let God rescue him now if he wants him, for he said, I am the Son of God. I mean, in their minds, they're thinking to themselves, the Son of God does not deserve to die so shamefully as this. The Son of God should be able to overcome this. And if he can't, well, he's not the Son of God after all. But those insults as he hung from the cross to die were the insults that he hung there to die for. God must not want him anymore. God is not rescuing him, so God must not want him. Indeed, that is how Jesus felt as darkness came over the whole land in the middle of the day. That is how Jesus felt, abandoned, not only betrayed, insulted, abused, accused, envied, spat on, now also abandoned by God himself. God is doing nothing about this. And he cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you left me alone on this cross to die? Why would God abandon Jesus on the cross? Why would God let this one born of the Spirit, born to a virgin, who could walk on the water, calm the seas, raise the dead, heal the sick, give sight to the blind, why would God simply let him die? Why isn't God stopping this? Why would God let the Son of God be rejected by the world he came into? Because that's what's happening here. You may know Easter, Good Friday, as the day when Jesus died on a cross. But we could also describe it as the day when the world rejected Jesus. It is the day when the world said, no. And not just go away, but die. It is the day that the world rejected their king. The world would rather get rid of than accept Jesus as our authority, as the Son of God. We see this in every generation. We would rather be our own authority. and get rid of Jesus and think that history is going to treat us kindly as a generation that got rid of Jesus. It's what's happening then in the rejoicing of the crowds, rejoicing, his blood is on our hands. How good is that? It was seen in the self-interest that had Jesus handed over to Pilate. This is what the Bible calls sin. Our living in a self-interested disobedience. Choosing to live according to our own desires rather than submitting to Jesus as the Son of God. We see it in how our nation makes laws that move away from God's commands. We see it in our own lives. We may say Jesus is Lord, but in our hearts would rather live our own ways. The world's rejection of Jesus here reflects our rejection of him by our sin. It shows, doesn't it? It shows how inhumanely we can act when someone comes and says, I am your king. Like Pilate asked the crowd, why? What crime has he committed? Well, only that he claimed to be our king. And so the sins that sent Jesus to the cross to die were the sins that Jesus was sent to die for. Can you see what a heavy day that is? What a horrendous day as the world rejected the Son of God. Can you see what he went through for you? Because this is us turning away from our King and Jesus taking it and dying for it. Can you see how willing Jesus was to endure our sin, our rejection of him, to the point of death on a cross? Now, these sufferings that he went through, they're a record of our best efforts to get rid of Jesus. That they are a record of how we respond to Jesus. But our best efforts did not change the fact that he is the Son of God. Because though we tried to reject him, God accepted him. Though we put him to death, God raised him from death. God raised him as the one who'd been given all authority in heaven and on earth, as the risen Son of God. Though we did everything we could to get rid of Jesus, God said, I will raise him from death. You see, no matter what we try and do, we try and turn away from Jesus, he is still the Son of God, and he has been given all authority. And so can you see what the Son of God went through for you? What we did to him was what he died for. He was sent to die on a cross for us, but he was also sent to overcome it in his resurrection. As we reflect and remember this day, remember our rejection of him. Remember those times where we decided we wanted to live our own way rather than his way. He died for that. Those times when we rejoiced in freeing ourselves from Jesus, well, he died for that. Our ignorance of Jesus, he died for that. Our desire to live our own ways, Jesus died for that. Friends, Jesus has taken our rejection of him upon himself. He experienced all our shameful treatment. The Son of God, rejected by men to death. The Son of God who stood triumphant over death. May we comprehend just how much he took from our hands. And may we be thankful that as Jesus died, he said, "It is paid in full. It is dealt with." will you treat me, accept me, receive me as the Son of God? May we be thankful for that. Amen.
At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks split, and the tombs broke open. The bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared to many people. When the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and all that had happened, they were terrified and exclaimed, "Surely he was the Son of God." Many women were there watching from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee to care for his needs. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons.
As evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of the rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting there opposite the tomb. The next day, the one after preparation day, the chief priests and the Pharisees went to Pilate. "Sir," they said, "we remember that while he was still alive, that deceiver said, 'After 3 days I will rise again.' So give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise his disciples may come and steal the body and tell the people that he had been raised from the dead. This last deception will be worse than the first." "Take a guard," Pilate answered. "Go, make the tomb as secure as you know how." So they went and made the tomb secure by putting a seal on the stone and posting the guard. Here ends the reading.